Okay, so in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how I built a oil and gas news digest using simple no-code tools. The two fundamental components of my stack are Airtable and a program called Make, which formerly was named Integromat. This is my database, and this is the glue that sticks everything together. So let me start by providing a very brief overview of what these two are, and I'll do a very simple example so you can understand what I mean by gluing things together and storing things in a database. So let me start here. This is Airtable, and I have created a test table, which as you currently see is absolutely empty. It has nothing. Now, Airtable is akin to Google Sheets or even Excel, but I have been using Airtable for a long time and I really like it. So I'm gonna stick to it for the purpose of this workflow. So right now I have a single column name, which is empty, and I'm going to add a new column to my table, and that's going to be a link. And let's call this URL as the heading there. Okay. And what I want to bring here is basically a source where I'm going to extract some information from. So for example, let's say I want to bring information from oil price website. So I'm just going to name that oil price, doesn't matter. And here's going to be the URL of that site. So you know oil price, right? So oilprice.com. So this is the site that I want to use to extract news snippets from. So in this site, you have a bunch of headings, and each of these headings has a bit of a description, and you click on it and it gives you the news, right? But if you go here and just add a slash and RSS, it'll point you to what is called the RSS feed, which is essentially the same type of information you saw on the website, but now it's presented in a bunch of HTML blocks. So I'm going to be using this as my source, and I'm going to paste that URL here. Okay, that's it. That's my database. Let's do just the one site for now, just to keep things simple. So what I want to do is to somehow create a workflow that reads this feed and then writes back onto this table. I want to do this automatically. So I want to write back onto this table what I'm reading off of that feed. So let me add a text field here, and let's just name it out for now. Okay, enable rich text formatting. Okay, so what I want to do again is to be able to read that site, that RSS feed, and drop back onto this table the information right out of this feed. Okay, so this is what I will build now using this make interface. Now the make interface right now contains basically an empty canvas. Okay, and this is not meant to be a full tutorial on the make application, but I just want to show you the simplicity of building scenarios with drag and drop functionality. So I'm going to bring a module, which is going to be an Airtable module. So there are a bunch of modules here. This is basically an app to connect various different applications. So the first one that I want to bring is Airtable because it's the one that I'm using. And what I want to do is to search records. Okay, so that's it. I've done my first step. I just selected the module of the application that I wanted. Now I need to create a connection. So here's where you basically enter your credentials, your username and password. I've done already that, but this is telling Make to connect to Airtable using those credentials. Once you've connected to it using your credentials, now you start mapping out these various fields that is going to prompt you. Now the base is, this is Airtable terminology. The base is that name. All this database in Airtable is called base, and that is the name of that base. And because I've connected Make to my Airtable account, it can recognize all the bases that I have in my Airtable account. So I'm going to look for that OG digest. So that's the one. And once I'm in that base, now it's going to request what is the specific table that I want to search. And these are the various tables that I have. So I'm going to be using that one, which is called test. So it's going to identify my tables. I'm going to choose the test table. All right. And that's it. I don't need to specify anything else. I'm just going to save that. And I'm just going to run that scenario with this play button. You see, that's a little bit of work. And then it finishes and it tells you there, if you click in there, it tells you what it did. So this is what it took as input, which is that one single row or record. In Airtable, a row is called a record. And the output was the name. So each column here, a name, URL, and then some additional extra metadata. So the ID is the unique identifier of that record, created time, just the one bundle, etc. Okay, so all that matter is now I've managed to actually identify what is the precise URL, and I've passed that onto my make scenario, and I'm reading that from this table. Now, the next step that I want to do is to, if I type there, there's a module called retrieve RSS feed items. So I want to do exactly that. So my URL is now the one that came from the preceding module. So this is where things are glued together, you see? So URL, I'm just going to map out, it's going to, let me expand this so you can see. So this is the module that I just added. I click on it and I now to now map the fields onto this thing. So the URL, instead of typing it, now I can bring it from the preceding module. If I put this here, you see that icon blinks because it tells you it's coming from that module. So what I want as URL is what I'm reading from the Airtable base in the preceding module. So that's the URL. Okay, and for now, I am not going to enter, but you could specify, let's say, just want news from the last week. So you specify date from, date to, and also an RSS feed can be very long, so you can limit that. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to limit to one news snippet just for the sake of this example. So, okay, just one, save it. Now, let me run this again. And now that was read, it got that output, it was passed on to the next module, and the RSS also completed successfully. And let's see, what did it give me? So it managed to read the feed from that URL. And now what it dropped is a bundle, which is a collection of things. And what it extracted from that RSS feed is the description, summary, the URL, date, and so on. So all of these things were extracted from this RSS module in this make integromat scenario. So what I'll do next now is I'll write back onto this table what this RSS module managed to extract. So what I'll do next is back to Airtable, but what I want to do now is update a record. So not search record as my first module. Now I'm going to update that very record. So again, I need to click on that module to go inside and start mapping the various fields. So again, the base that I want is OG digest, that one there. The table that I'm interested in updating is the test table, just as before. And the record ID is, okay, which precise record or row do you want to update? So now I'm going to go back. Let me expand this once again so you can see the thing blinking. So which one is the record that you need? Well, I already have a previous module. You see that module number 7 there. That's the record that I want, that ID. That's the unique identifier. That is the one row that I want to update. And what is it that I want to update? I don't want name, I don't want URL, so I skip that. Skip that. Out is the column or the field that I want to update. What I'm going to update it with? Well, I have the preceding RSS feed module, that one there, and precisely is that description what I'm going to be putting there just for the sake of this example again. So save. And now let's run this thing again. And you can see that one will be written with the output from this RSS module. So let me hit play. The whole thing is going to run, extracted, and it wrote down there. So if I go back to the table now, you can see now that is the description from the RSS module that I dropped here. Now I could have dropped other things. I could have dropped the title, the link, the description, the summary, and obviously I could have done that for all the various news snippets, not just the one, because I constrained this to one for the sake of this example. But this is just to give you a bit of a introduction as to how this thing works. We started with an empty canvas. We started dropping modules, and by simply clicking and mapping, so literally drag and drop, you can, the canvas can become a little bit complex with a lot of extra modules, but this gives you a bit of an idea as to how this thing works. In other words, as a summary, we specified a single URL where we wanted to extract information from, and we managed to do this using an external service, in this case, Make Integromat, and without having to code anything, we managed to do something really interesting. We read the RSS feed, extracted what we wanted, and we dropped back that information onto the table. Okay, now I could do something else with this information. For example, put it under a heading, give it some nice formatting, and send it via email. As a matter of fact, let me just demonstrate that as an example. Let's say that I want to send this via email. So I'm going to look for my Gmail module. Okay, craft, create a draft. Let's see what is the module that I actually need. Copy an email, create a draft, delete an email, move an email, send an email. That's the one that I want to do, okay? And the subject is going to be test, and the content is what I'm reading off of that preceding module, which is the description that I dropped there. So, for example, I can say content. I'm just going to type this. This is a test. Well, let's save ourselves all the problem. Let's just drop this as an example, test out. Okay, and I'm just going to save that to recipients. I'm going to send it to myself, alan.morges@gmail.com. Obviously, you can imagine that I could have a different table with a bunch of email addresses. In this case, just for the sake of the example, I'm just going to send an email from my Crowdfield email address to my personal email address, and that email should have test as a subject, test news snippets. That's the subject line, and the content is that very snippet which we wrote in the table in the preceding step. Okay, so that's it. And again, if I empty that and I run the whole thing again, and now I'm also going to bring my phone. Let me bring my phone viewer to the screen with the email app open. Okay, so let me bring this window here. That's my phone with my Gmail app. So that's the current status, and I'm going to run this scenario now. And okay, there it is. It filled in that fields, and now this one also managed to complete successfully. And there you go. That's the email that I just received. If I click on it, it has exactly what we wrote into that Airtable field there. So in a matter of minutes, with no code, with simple drag and drop tools, I managed to extract information from this RSS feed. I constrained it to just the first one for the sake of this example, just one. new snippet, and I managed to automatically send it via email. So now I receive in my inbox stat. So again, this was just to give you a bit of a flavor of how this thing would work. But next I'm going to show you what I've actually built with, which is obviously go beyond, yes, this very simplistic single example. Let's go to it now. So now we're going to go to this other table, which is called sources. And essentially it's the same as we had done before, but instead of having a single URL, now I have a list of URLs. This is already a filtered view from a longer list with a bunch of websites that I'm looking into incorporating in my workflow. But for now, I'm just going to be interested in those who are already in an RSS feed format. All the other ones with a no qualifier do not work in the current state because they're just websites. So I need to actually do extra work to turn them into RSS feeds, which is what I need to be usable in my scenario building. And also I'm going to add a category because I'm interested right now in global news, news related to Australia and New Zealand, tech, AI, and so forth, and also natural gas and LNG markets. So these are my current areas of interest. So I'm going to be building a digest related to these type of news. All of these can be obviously customized. You can add regions, Europe, Latin America, or you can add other categories if you're interested in something else other than this, but this is how I'm kicking things off. So this approved view are the ones filtered from the previous view with all those that have the approved checkbox. So in other words, I'm just going to be extracting news from only these URLs, okay? Now the scenario now looks a little bit more complex compared to the one that I showed you before, but essentially it's in plain English the same as we did before. So we first read all the sources instead of having just the one. We have a bunch of URL sources now, and then I'm going to be splitting into all the 5 categories. So this router separates all that first bunch of URLs with all the various sources into the 5 categories: news related to Australia, news related to New Zealand, global, and so on. And in each of these categories, I follow a sequential workflow, the series of steps, which is essentially about reading now the news snippets inside of those RSS feeds and then put them in proper formatting. So I'm not going to go into the details of each of these modules, but this is what I'm doing in each of these horizontal workflows you see here. So I'm going to run this so you can see what is it that happens. Now, the outputs is going to be written on this OG Digest archive table. So right now, the table is empty. I'm going to run this scenario. You're going to see what happens. So let's click play. It's going to be reading. It's going to be splitting and see as each line is run, this table starts getting filled and there is one row or one record per category. And when the whole thing is done, so done, this table is already finished. So if I expand this a little bit, we can see what is it that we brought back to the table. We got the category of each row, and then we have a section title because I need this to feed into my email. It'll become clear in a minute. And this is what I'm calling the RSS stitch. So inside of each of these, I have a bunch of news snippets related to that category with proper HTML formatting. Okay. So if I use, for example, this first Australia news RSS stitch as example, I'm going to select all, Control C, and I'm going to view this on this online HTML viewer. That's for you to understand what is it that means. I'm going to paste this block. So all of that that sits in this table there renders like this. So this is what I'm producing automatically with this automation that I just built. Okay, so I got that one per category. What I need to do next is to first summarize the output for each category into the top 10 news. I don't want to have, 50 news snippets. I'm just going to focus on the top 10. So this is what the next step of the workflow does. I have this button that I can do this manually one row at a time. And that will trigger a summarization scenario, which I have in make here. So the RSS top 10, the first module is a webhook, which is essentially think of a telephone, right? So with this button here, what it does is it rings this module and it passes on all that output that was written in this field. And then I will process it. So what this scenario does is it takes that from the Airtable base, is what this does. So first I ring, then I pass on that from the table, and then I pass it to a ChatGPT module, which is the intelligence needed to read the entire thing and turn it into a top 10 summary. And then I'm going to be writing back into here that summary. This is what this scenario does. Okay, now I can do it for that. So I'm going to hit that first one. Okay, click on it. Now it's working. Now it's the ChatGPT module is reading that stuff. It's going to extract the top 10, and there you go. It was written back onto this field here. Okay, so if I expand, now I get that, and if I copy that and go back to the viewer, select the whole thing and paste that, now I should read only 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So top 10. So this is what I did with that summarization module. Okay, now I could do that with the other buttons, or I could run a little mini script that does this automatically for me. So instead of me clicking each of those, I have a run top 10 summary for all records. So you don't even need to code. You can actually use the inbuilt AI to say, run this top 10 for all the records. So I'm just gonna run it. And as it runs, this will trigger again in the backend this thing, and it'll start writing back into the table these fields in the summary column. Okay, you can see here again, it's done, close, and all the summaries have already been written. So that's it. I got all the summaries for each of the categories. All I need to do now is to merge all of these summary outputs for all the categories and put them together in a single long block of HTML and put it in an email structure. So the first step is to merge them together. And to do that, I'm going to run this second script that I added here. Again, you don't need to know how to code. You can ask this in plain English. Even you can do it to ChatGPT. It doesn't need to be inside the Airtable interface. You can view the script. It's very simple here. This can be created for you. You don't need to know how to do it. I'm just going to close that window and run that script. What this will do is it'll merge all of those summary outputs into a single stitched HTML. I'm going to drop in this second table, which as of now is empty. Okay, so I'm going to run that scenario and that table will get filled. Let's see what happens. There we go. It gives me the current date when I wrote this record. And now that contains all the various snippets for all my categories. So if I copy all of this and view it to see how it looks. So if I paste that, now I have global with my top 10 news snippets, Australia, top 10, New Zealand, top 10, AI, digital and tech, top 10, natural gas, top 10. So that's exactly what I wanted to generate. Top 10 news for all the categories of interest of mine, all of which can be customized. Instead of top 10, you can do top 5. You can remove regions you're not interested in. If you're not interested in New Zealand, for example, or you are interested in Europe, you can bring those. All of these can be customized, but the main skeleton is here and it's working. right? So all there is left to do is to send this via email. And I'm going to hit that button, and that button in here, after I have the long stitch created, that button is going to now call this other scenario. Again, it's a webhook, it's a phone call between Airtable and Make Integromat. It's going to pass that long stitch, and it's going to send it via email, and it's also going to update this record with a checkbox after the email has been sent. So let me bring my phone again onto the visible screen so you can see. So here's my phone with my email, and I'm going to hit that, and that's going to trigger this scenario, and the email will get received onto my Gmail phone here. So let's go. Click. It's working. It's sending the email. It's done. Now on the table that got ticked, and the email is not quite there yet, but give it a second. Oh, I think I didn't send it to my Gmail. I did send it to my, let me just actually double check. Where is it that I'm sending this? To my Morek account. So I brought the wrong interface, but let me quickly go back to my, and there you go. So we have the email received, and if I click on it, that's the newsletter. So this is exactly how you would receive in your inbox the news digest with the top 10 news for each of the categories. Global, top 10, Australia, top 10, New Zealand, AI digital and tech, and natural gas. So this is a starting point, as I said. It's working. It has nice formatting with the heading, subheading, and these are live links, so you can click on it and it'll bring you to the very source where that news snippet came from. Again, all these sources can be finessed and use alternative sources if you're interested in something other than the ones that I have listed here, but all of this can be fine-tuned down the track. But this is a starting point, and the idea was for me to show you how using simple no-code tools you can automate a creation of a news digest and get it in your inbox. If you're interested in, let me know, and obviously I can add you to the distribution list and start receiving this in your inbox yourself, and I'll be looking forward to your feedback. Cheers.